Hey, we're going to be doing Life of Pi chapter 8 to 14. Once again, these are just the points that are the most important for you to remember and that will help you understand the novel as a whole. It will also help you when you're answering your questions because they'll give you like an extract and they'll say, what is the significance of this sentence? And that means like, why is this sentence important, So that type of thing. These are the points that will help you be able to answer those questions. Okay, so chapter 8, Pi starts talking about humans are the most dangerous animals in the zoo. He says that his father has a sign at the zoo that says, it has like a curtain, and it basically says something about if you pull back the curtain, you'll see the most dangerous animal in the zoo. And when people pull back this curtain, there's a mirror. So basically, Pi's father is saying that we are the most dangerous animal in the zoo. And then he talks about how humans are the reasons why animals get sick. We feed them stuff that they shouldn't be eating and those types of things. Then at some point in that chapter, there's a sentence that says an animal is an animal. And then Pi says he first learned this from his father and then he learned this from Richard Parker. So he goes on to tell the story about how he learned this from his father. And his father one morning says like to Pi's mom, I need to teach them a lesson. It is a lesson that will save their lives. So Pi and his brother are a bit afraid, obviously. They don't understand what's going on, but that sentence is very important, save their lives, and you will see why later on in the book. And because you should have read this chapter, I'm not going to tell you what happens, but once again, I will link Micah Reads in the description. He reads so that you don't have to if you're not a reader. But if you want to read it, by all means, you should. And then he says, I quite deliberately dressed wild animals in tame costumes of my imagination. So Pi says, even though he knows animals are dangerous, he would normally like dress them in tame costumes, so he would imagine them to not be as dangerous. And then his father teaches him the lesson that he wanted the boys to learn. And then they go for a walk around the zoo because, as you know, the boys watch a tiger eat a goat. Okay, so he starts talking about the hyenas and he says they'll start eating you while you're still alive. So this is a very important sentence because you'll see why later on in the book. And then he talks about orangutans and he says that they are wild and unpredictable, which is another important point that you must remember. And then because what happened is Pi's father showed them how a tiger can eat a goat. At the end of the chapter, Ravi says to Pi, wait until we're alone, you're the next goat, which is another important sentence because it is, in a sense, foreshadowing. Okay. But now, the reason why Ravi says this is because Pi, when they thought they were in trouble, Pi blamed his brother. Okay. So then chapter 9 just talks about a flight distance between animals. So normally Pi talks about how if you're standing a certain amount of meters away from an animal, they might not feel threatened by you. But if you go any closer, they will feel threatened by you. And then he says, in order to get them to not feel threatened by you, you have to diminish that distance. Then chapter 10, Pi talks about how animals do escape their cages sometimes, but it's only if their conditions have not been met. So their conditions need to be met in order for them to be happy. And then later on in that chapter, he says, all living things contain a measure of madness that moves them in strange, sometimes inexplicable ways. So that's another sentence that you need to remember. And then chapter 11, Pi just talks about escaped animals. And he says, he tells the story of this one tiger. And then he says, she wasn't found for a very long time because she was hiding. She didn't want to be a threat, but if someone threatened her or came close to her territory, once again, flight distance, then obviously there would be a problem. And then he says, if you take Tokyo and you turn it upside down and shook it, if you took the city of Tokyo and turned it upside down and shook it, you would be amazed at the animals that would fall out. It would pour more than cats and dogs, I tell you. And then he tells you a list of animals that could fall out if you just turned Tokyo upside down and shook all the animals out. And then he says, and they expect to find, in the middle of a Mexican tropical jungle, imagine, it's laughable, simply laughable. What were they thinking? This is a very important sentence, because this sentence ties right into the end of the book. So that's a sentence you need to remember, because once again, it's a very important sentence. And then chapter 12, this is from the author's perspective again. He's talking about Pi. Now remember, Pi is an adult here, and he says that Pi gets agitated. It's not anything that the author says or does. It's just he gets agitated by his own story. And then chapter 13 talks about a lion's pit, and how if you fell into a lion's pit, it wouldn't attack you because it's hungry. It would attack you because you invaded its territory. And then he talks about the circus trainer and how it enters the pit first. The pit first. The reason why he says this is because it's about establishing dominance. So if the circus trainer enters the pit first, then he is busy telling the lions that this is my territory. So the lions already know that the circus trainer is the boss. Okay. And then he reinforces him being the boss by blowing his whistle, cracking his whip, etc. Then chapter 14, Pi just talks here, or the story, not Pi, the story talks about how normally the weakest lion in like the pride is the male that does the best tricks, and the reason why is because the weakest male has the most to gain. So the weakest male, by doing what the circus trainer wants, has protection from the circus trainer, because now the circus trainer is the alpha male. So he's basically saying that the weakest male has the most to gain, and that is why they're normally the best performers in a circus. Okay, and that's all we're going to do for today. But once again, those lines are very important. Sticky note it in your book, underline it, put a little star next to it, because these are the types of things that will help you answer your questions. So thank you.